Heyo everybody, Zack here with RevZilla and welcome to a very special edition of Daily Rider. I'm coming at you from Chelsea, Vermont, my hometown, and I have a very special guest. My dad's R80 GS, circa 1981. So that's an original GS, which is a great bike to talk about on Daily Rider to begin with because of its history and pedigree and stuff like that. But this is also the first bike that I really spent any time on the street. Learned how to slide and wheelie and get into trouble on two wheels. So we're gonna ride around my hometown on the Daily Ride, if you will, take a little tour of central Vermont and take a little trip down memory lane with an old member of the family. Let's hit the road. Okie dokie everybody, here we have it. My dad's original GS. Before we jump into this ride, a friendly reminder that this episode is brought to you by QuadLock. QuadLock makes mobile device cases, chargers, and mounts for all the vehicles that we cover here on Daily Rider and many more. QuadLock also supports Daily Rider, which means for every QuadLock product that you buy at RevZilla.com, I don't know, we're one step closer to getting to do a cool remote episode like this, I suppose. So thank you to QuadLock, and to learn more about QuadLock products and support excursions like this for Daily Rider, you can click on the link in the description of this video or the tag above. Okie doke, where do we start? We can start with the engine, as we often do. That is an 800cc horizontally opposed twin, or a boxer twin. Very simple engine, 2-valve heads, and these little thingies are carburetors for you kids out there. And yeah, this engine is sort of what I learned to work on. Not this bike specifically, my dad had other BMWs, but really easy engine to work on because the valves and everything are right here, so you can just take it off and adjust valves, access the carburetor and a lot of that stuff really easily. So that's one of the nice designs, easy to work on. Let me see here. Single-sided swing arm, which is a little hard to see from this side, but this is the only side. It's got lugs on the other side, which is kind of a neat feature of the original GS, in my opinion. These big Jesse bags that my dad bought from Jesse headquarters in Arizona on his way to Mexico and Central America one year, one of the times that he went down there on this bike. Some big honking fog lights that he got from a buddy of his. And this is not a stock fender, but the stock fender ended up barfing a lot of rainwater up onto the tank, and my dad didn't like that, so he put a /7 fender on it to keep some of the rain off the gas tank and out of the cockpit. And what else we got here? You got yourself a 21-inch front wheel. I think this is a 260 mil rotor up here. We'll talk about braking performance at some point. Spoiler alert, it's not great. Yeah, so my dad's upgraded shock, Works Performance shock on there. And then this big old gas tank from a Cherbis. That's an 11-gallon gas tank on the GS. In part because of my dad's aforementioned adventures into Mexico and Central America. Wanted to have lots of range, so hopefully we'll remember to talk about that during this ride as well. Other than that, yeah, a lot of little quirks and whatnot. I think he said this is the 3rd or 4th covering that he's put on this Corbin seat. Lots of miles on this bike. He's lost track, but more than 100,000. So yeah, it's quite a storied machine in my family and in general, and I'm looking forward to taking it for a spin. So it's on. Let's see if it fires up. There we go. Yeah, nice polite idle. Cool. Well, there you have it. The original GS from my dad's garage. Downtown Chelsea, Vermont is that way, but if we just went straight to town, it'd only take us about 30 seconds. So we're gonna go out of town. We're gonna take a little cruise up through the hills and come back to town for some Instagram questions. Okie dokie, everybody. Let's climb on board and get off on the daily ride, shall we? Yep. Look both ways for traffic, but there's probably not much traffic. Okie doke, so first thing we usually cover on Daily Rider is specs. And the specs for the R80 GS from 1981 were a little harder to find than most of the specs that I cover. As far as I can tell, it was for sale for about 4,800 American dollars way back when, which equates to about 15 grand in 2022 dollars. So a pretty decent price for a capable machine, I suppose. The 11-gallon gas tank that my dad put on here replaced a 5.1 gallon tank, and when that was full, the claimed weight of the bike with gas in the tank, I believe, was just over 400 pounds, 409 maybe, something like that. I don't know how much my dad's weighs, but I do know that if you fill the 11-gallon tank, he said it's about 77 pounds of gasoline. So not for the faint of heart if you want a full tank. And then the engine, 797cc boxer twin down there. I think they claimed about 50 horsepower and 41 foot-pounds of torque, something like that, way back when. My dad said he estimated about 40 or 45 at the rear wheel, so it's not a rocket ship, but it gets where it needs to go. And then your seat height, 33.9 inches was listed by stock specs way back when. Which is kind of a tall seat, but being a bike that weighs just over 400 pounds, it's doesn't feel super intimidating compared to new bikes that often weigh 450 or 500 these days, even though the seat is a little bit high. As for the riding position in general, I mean, very comfortable. The foot pegs feel a titch high. I'm kind of surprised when I get on it every time that I always expect the foot pegs to be a little bit lower. But that might just be based on the evolution of bikes over the past 40 years or something like that. But yeah, it's a very, very comfortable place to sit. Nice wide handlebar, upright seating position, wide seat. I mean, you know, the GS is famous for its travel adventure capability, and its comfort is one of the reasons why. Then again, one interesting note on that, as we pass the old lumber yard in town, is that when the bike came out, people didn't like it. You know, a lot of really nasty comments from motorcycle journalists in the day of, you know, what the heck would anyone want with a $5,000 400-pound dual sport? What a stupid idea. It's the worst of both worlds. You know, stuff like that, which I think is interesting. As I've mentioned before, and Ari and I have talked about in past videos, it's just funny that you think about what a capable, good bike this is to go down the highway and travel around the world. And when it first came out, people really poo-pooed it. Alrighty, well, we've exhausted just about all the pavement in my hometown. We're gonna peel off onto a gravel road here, which is most of the roads in my town look like this. At least in the summer and fall, they look like this. In the spring, sometimes it looks more like chocolate pudding. But as you can see, nice and smooth, in good condition right now, so that's nice. So yeah, we're not going to hit any actual highway on this daily ride, but as I mentioned, it is a comfortable bike on the highway. This bike's got a 5-speed, and by the time you get going 75 or 80, the engine's spinning pretty high. 65, 70 is where it's a little bit more comfortable, I think, and where the gas mileage should be a little bit better. And on that topic, since we're not going to talk about gas mileage on any freeway section, I'll just mention right now, my dad says he gets about 40, 42, something like that, low 40s. So yeah, your range with the 11 gallons is going to be well over 400 miles. Play your cards right, which is pretty good. Best range of any bike we've ever covered on Daily Rider, that's for sure. These little gravel roads, it's like sections of loose dirt and gravel on the edges and sometimes in the middle of the lanes. It can catch you out on other bikes, and you know, this kind of environment is honestly really, really good for this type of bike. And central Vermont roads are not why the BMW GS succeeded, but they are a window into why the bike succeeded, because it feels planted and in command and I don't know, just sort of willing and happy in these environments on roads like this. You get a little wiggle from the front end, no big deal. It handles well. It's really, really a pleasant bike to ride in these conditions, and exactly the reason that people have taken it around the world across roads similar to this. One of the questions I got a lot of on social media was about reliability and maintenance, and this not being my bike, I haven't done much of the maintenance. Although my dad did remind me that the front fender conversion that he did there did involve me to a certain extent, because he thought that fender would fit because he had it on there with a worn-out tire, and then he asked me to change the front tire, so I did. And then I came in and I said, the fender or the wheel doesn't fit on the bike anymore. And he was like, man, I gotta help you change a tire. Come on, you're better than this. And then he came out and it didn't fit anymore because the tread was taking up too much space in the wheel well of the fender. Anyway, he's made a lot of modifications over the years, as I've said, and maintenance-wise, he's done a lot of stuff. I mean, he had a 1000cc R100 engine in this bike for a while, then he went back to the original engine. He did most of his travels with the R80 engine, but he did do a conversion for a minute, and he's fiddled with it, messed with it. He's owned it since the early 1990s, so he's had it for at least 30 years, maybe even a little bit more. And in that amount of time, you end up tinkering with stuff. Another interesting note about my dad's ownership of this bike is he said he bought it for $1,600. Not bad, right? Yeah, anyway. It was a different time, I suppose. Not a whole heck of a lot of stop signs here in rural Vermont, but here at Bradshaw Crossing, we got a stop sign here. We can do a little stop sign challenge. See if we can get down to 0 miles an hour. Oh, I stalled it, son of a gun. Well, I'm obviously rusty, but in general, the balance of this bike's pretty good. It's, if you fill the gas tank, obviously it's going to be heavy. But even with a few gallons, 5 gallons in the tank, the fuel stays pretty low. And of course, the Boxer engine from BMW is famous for sort of low center of gravity. That's one of the things. So it doesn't feel particularly heavy. I mean, for a modern bike, it's not very heavy, and the weight is fairly low despite it being tall. So back in, the early 80s when all those journalists were talking trash about it, it wasn't quite as, in the future as we sit now. It's not quite as bad as it maybe was. All right, this is where I would come to catch the school bus. Corner of an apple orchard. So in the fall, there were plenty of apples to eat and throw at people, mostly, if I'm honest. Got a little willy there. Yeah, so I used to ride my dirt bike or my bicycle, or yeah, lasting around. It might not be Paris-Dakar, but it's a decent test of suspension and basic usability. And look at it go, galloping along here. All right, just about home, which will be the sort of midpoint of our ride. I'm gonna respect the new owners of my family home and not bother them in their dooryard, but there she blows. House I grew up in. And in and around these trees here, I'd bomb around on my dirt bike, make racetracks, and pretend that I had friends or siblings. My mom's horse arena. Yeah, there you have it, everybody. This was my first stomping ground out in this neck of the woods. Just me and a couple of dirt bikes. A little, I got Swayze here. I left a little mark. Nice. It's just like way back when. It's just like elementary school. Leaving tire marks. Can we back it in? Yeah, a little bit. No ABS on the old GS. All right, back down to the bus stop and the apple orchard, and now we're headed home. So we'll head back to town a slightly different way than we got here. The more direct route should be downhill, and we can test brakes, among other things. Yee-hoo! 60 miles an hour gravel road. Smooth as you like. Alright, we're gonna bang a left. Rap. We're gonna back it in. Ah! Oh, look out. So for no other reason than I just remembered, how about we call this Lover's Lane and talk about passenger accommodations. And I don't have a ton of experience with my wife on the back of this bike, but I have spent a lot of time on the back of this bike as a kid, riding around with my dad. And I always thought it was pretty comfy. And my stepmom also spent 10,000 miles on the back of this bike in one trip from the Southwest United States down to, I don't know, Honduras, Nicaragua, so on and so forth. And she says it's her favorite bike to ride on the back of. So, you know, she might be a little bit biased, but in general, the GS has a good reputation for passenger accommodations, and I think it deserves it. It's certainly a good motorcycle to be 2 up on. I think even a vintage one like this is pretty good. My friends from elementary school lived right there. It was always fun coming over to his house because he lived at the bottom of this huge hill, which is probably not coming through super clear on the camera, but it's pretty steep actually. And so we'd go to the top with our bicycles and we'd see how fast we could go all the way down. We probably crashed our brains out. Probably skinned a few elbows and knees on this hill. Good times, good times. All right, now down the other side of this hill, which is very steep. And since we're not going to hit a lot of stop signs, as I said, we can talk about brakes here. No ABS on the original GS, of course. And a single disc up there, and not a very big one. And disc brakes hadn't even been around for that long at this point in history. And it's not a good brake. It's not good. You can eventually lock it up on a dirt road, but on pavement, you're going to want to grab it with more than 2 fingers, I think. It's fairly wooden, and gets the job done, especially considering the bike only makes, 45, 50 horsepower or something. But yeah, overall, the brakes, not good. One heck of a beautiful day, though. By gosh. It makes you want for nothing except a nice road to ride on conditions like this. Although the bike does have heated grips and those big honking fog lights that you saw. So, there are some creature comforts, but, no cruise, no ABS, no fuel injection, no... What else does it not have? Plenty of stuff. Plenty of stuff. We're twisting down towards town here. The village is just below us. We're on the Bobbin Shop Road, so named for the Bobbin Shop that's at the bottom. I'll let you younger folks look up what a bobbin is. Anyway, twisty section road here, and we're not going to get any real twisty sections of pavement, but I did want to address that as how the bike handles on pavement. It handles pretty well down twisty roads. These big Jesse bags that my dad has on the back actually have scuffs on the bottom from when he was cruising along twisty roads and he was feeling it and dragged the bottom of the cases leaning over so far. So, is it a sport bike? No, not even close. But, if you want to tackle a set of curves, you'll probably have some fun. I'll try and get a better back in here. Oh, that's our turn, actually. Shoot, we're going to do that dirt section. All right, let's flip around. Spam a jamma. Crap. We're going to do a little, we're going to look for a little, little 2-track business here. Try and be polite. This is municipal land. But we don't have a railroad track in Chelsea, so we don't have a off-road shortcut, so to speak. This is where I used to train with the high school soccer team. We used to run back here. See the tires you had to scamper over. And look at the old GS go, bumbling along here. This isn't like hard enduro or anything. But keep in mind, 1980 was when the bike was built, and a BMW in 1980 doing this was unheard of. I mean, there was no such thing as a KTM 350 EXC, and BMW made big touring bikes and stuff. So going down a dirt path like this was sort of like a weird thing to do, and the bike was groundbreaking for that reason. And even though people might not have liked it, some people way back when, it eventually turned into a case of the best of both worlds, having comfort on the street and a little bit of off-road capability, and instead of being the worst of both worlds. And And, you know, the GS dynasty as it sits now is proof in the pudding, I suppose. Back to pavement, just about. All right, that was fun. I wish more daily riders had more dirt. We took the scenic route to get to town. Here we are. Oh, traffic, look at that, holy smokes. Look at all the cars on the road, for crying out loud. But here we are, downtown Chelsea. There's the library across the street there, post office, the twin stores. If you're passing through Vermont, I recommend Will's store. Make in-house ice cream. This is where I would go every day on my tiny little commute. Here we are, Chelsea Public School. 365 kids, kindergarten through 12th grade when I went here. And since then, fewer than that, unfortunately. But there you have it. We're right smack downtown in Chelsea, Vermont on my dad's bike. We made it to school. We're just about done with the ride here. One more little rev of the engine. It's a car muffler on there that my dad bought in Arizona. I think he said 1999, or no, 2006. Bought the first one, he said, for 22 bucks. The second muffler was 60 bucks. He's had on there for almost 20 years, and he said he's hoping he doesn't have to buy another one, because, you know, who needs that? All right, there we have it. 1981 BMW R80 GS through my hometown. And you all had some pretty good Instagram questions, so let's dive into that, shall we? This question's from Simon PX, who says, how does it compare to its descendants? A good question, right? Lots and lots of descendants. R100 GS, R1100 GS, R1150, R1200, R1250. Yeah, I think my buddy Spencer wrote an article about the Moto Guzzi, V85 TT. And he said it really kind of reminded him maybe the most of an R80 GS. So I think that's a good idea. If you think about the difference between a V85 TT Moto Guzzi from now and an R1250 GS, they're worlds apart on a scale of engine performance and sort of just sort of like prestige, I guess. The Moto Guzzi is a niche bike, and it's a fun bike, but it's not considered fast. It's not considered particularly big, and that's a good allegory for this bike. It's not particularly fast in modern terms, or particularly big, or any of those things. Oddly, the bikes have just become so kind of massive. It's really fun, though, I think, because it compares in so much as you think, yeah, this is a good idea for a motorcycle. That's what I think when I get on this bike. And to think that it's evolved over 40 years and has become what it is now, I still get on a GS and I think this is a good motorcycle. This is useful. It's a tenuous connection at this point as far as actual riding experience. But then again, the sort of theory behind the bike is still very much present in this bike as much as the new one, which I think is pretty cool. Next question is from Louis Haji, who asks, is every bike better when it belongs to your dad? Yeah, absolutely, right? And I see this bike very much through rose-colored glasses because I have such a history with it. My dad has a history with it, and I grew up working on it and bikes like it. So yeah, that's certainly a part of it. And I think that someone else could do a review of this bike and easily kind of tear it apart and think, God, the transmission is terrible, and the brakes are terrible, and the suspension's not very good from a modern standpoint, and why does the kickstand have a spring on it so that it kicks up every time it's not touching, which means you can't leave the kickstand down, which is nice, but you also have to like leave your leg in front of the bike and then tip the bike over onto it, and what the heck were they thinking? So all those things are valid, I think, if you want to complain about them. And for me, I just think, that's part of the charm of the bike, and that's the thing that I like about it. So yeah, every bike is better when it belongs to your dad, I think. Then I think that's sort of like a special thing about motorcycling, right? I mean, I referred to this thing as a part of the family, and I really kind of feel like it is, oddly. So it's both good and bad, I guess. So take my review with a grain of salt, and if you have an opportunity, take your dad's bike for a spin. and you might like it more than you think. Next question is from JC in the BCC, who asks, if you were to ride to Central America and back, would you take this or a new GSA? That's GS Adventure. Also, what is the best maple creamy shop in Chelsea? Okay, so first things first, if I was going to ride to Central America, I would probably want a new GS. I like the horsepower, I like the features, I like the I don't know, the electronic suspension. I mean, I like the luxury of it. I'm attracted to, I won't lie. But if if someone said you're going to go and you got to make it to the bottom of South America and I don't know. I mean, I'm attracted to the fact that a new GS probably won't break, but I'm very attracted to the fact that I'd be much more likely to fix this if it did break. So yeah, from my sort of nostalgic eyes, I might take this very bike. Then again, if you can afford it, I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking a vintage bike to Central America instead of a modern one, especially something like a newish KLR, which you can probably fix with a hammer and a toothpick anyway, and it also probably won't break down. As for the best maple creamy shop in Chelsea, I don't think you can get maple creamies in Chelsea. I'm not sure, but Will's store downtown, one of the twin stores down there. If you're passing through Chelsea, stop at Will's. They got ice cream and snacks and stuff there. They got soft serve, and they do make their own in-house ice cream. So that would be my recommendation for you. Next question is from Edge Back, who asks, what does this bike have that newer GSs have lost in their evolution? I like this question a lot. And there are a couple things that occur to me. One is the sort of size and simplicity of it. Like, I would love a new 800cc Boxer from BMW that weighed 400 pounds. Wouldn't that be rad? So, the fact that evolution always means stuff has to get bigger is not always great, in my opinion. The other thing is gear spacing. You daily rider fanatics know that I'm kind of a snob when it comes to gear spacing, and I like that when you shift up in this bike, it feels like you go to the next gear. And the swing from fourth to fifth is pretty large, whereas new GSs have the close ratio gearbox that I don't quite understand. I wish that fifth and sixth were really like travel touring gears, and I don't know why they've lost that in evolution. Other than that, maybe the 21-inch front wheel. I don't know. I don't think you give up much with a 21-inch front wheel, and you get some, it rolls over stuff when off-road a little better. I don't know. I don't think an Africa Twin handles a lot worse or differently than a modern GS because of its 21-inch front wheel. I think the modern GS has more going for it than an Africa Twin does from a handling department, but I don't think it's the 19-inch front wheel that helps the new GS. I think a 21 would be fine. So, I don't know. There's a small list of things that maybe old bikes have over new bikes. All right, last question is from Matty Bow 984, who asks, what's your favorite road in Vermont? So we'll answer that one really quickly. I'm just partial to Route 110 that goes through Chelsea right here. It's not the most spectacular road in Vermont. I think Route 100 has some good stuff. Route 14 is good, but 110 is my home turf. I like the curves. I know them well. I still do. After all these years, I like dipping through and I remember where the bumps are and stuff. It's really fun. So that's my answer. And the second part of Matty Bow's question is, what flavor of Ben & Jerry's would you compare this bike to? And this is a fantastic question. So bear with me here. I'm going with Cherry Garcia from Ben & Jerry's, which if you've never had it, I recommend you try. Cherry Garcia is a classic flavor from Ben & Jerry's. Famous, even. Maybe even like one of the things that put Ben & Jerry's on the map was Cherry Garcia. It's a little bit of an odd combination, cherries and chocolate and ice cream. I don't think it was something that people necessarily were expecting. And when I was a kid, I didn't really like it. I don't know why. It weirded me out. But I've grown into it. I've grown to love it, and I've grown to appreciate what Cherry Garcia, the flavor, means to the history of Ben & Jerry's. And it's very unique, and it always just reminds me of Vermont. And so that's the flavor that I think this GS would be. The GS, the R80 GS kind of created the legacy of the BMW GS and changed the course of BMW history. And yeah, when I was a little kid, I just thought this was like my dad's bike. It wasn't anything special, but I've grown to appreciate what it's done for motorcycling and for me. So hopefully that answer is worthwhile. Man, I'm getting kind of emotional at the end of this one. Yeah, I'm happy to be able to take you all through my town. on one of my favorite bikes of all time. And now we're gonna have to jump about 2,500 miles or so to the Daily Rider leaderboard to see where this baby stacks up. Let's do it. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we are back in Los Angeles, California. I do so much appreciate the ability to show you my old stomping grounds and such a formative motorcycle in my life. It was a special moment for me, so thanks for riding along. I do have a little heart on my dad's GS there, ready to go on the leaderboard. And keep in mind, this is going to go on the Daily Rider Classics side of the leaderboard. Old bikes, in other words, lack of a better word. We've got the Honda Trail 90 that carried Erie across Alaska. Dave the Gixxer, which we matched up against the Panigale. A two-stroke Yamaha RZ 350, my personal KTM 950 Supermoto, a Honda RC 30 iconic superbike that we borrowed from Iconic Motorbikes, and the Battletoad, a 2009 Kawasaki Versys 650. So where do we think the OG GS will stack up on the Daily Rider Classics leaderboard? Pretty darn well. I mean, it's the original versatile bike. I mean, you know, maybe not literally, but from a brochure standpoint and a marketing standpoint, you know, it's sort of the one that kicked off the whole idea of like part touring bike, part off-road bike. And it doesn't matter if you ride it on a dirt road, a paved road, a city, a highway, it's pretty good, really. Better than most of these bikes. Would I take it to work instead of my own KTM Supermoto? Probably not, but from an approachability standpoint and an icon standpoint and a classic standpoint, the RDGS would get the nod there. And it's more comfortable and probably ultimately a little less finicky, not to mention a little cheaper than an RC30. So I think it's gonna go right here. Yeah, I'm tempted to give it the nod over the Battletoad because my dad's GS and the Battletoad are both kind of clapped out. But my dad's GS is arguably in better shape than our Battletoad here. But you know, Versys doesn't have ABS, GS doesn't have ABS. Ultimately, if the two of them were in as new or at least good condition, a 2009 Versys or a 1980, 81 BMW R GS, the Versys is probably a better daily rider. A little faster, maybe a little bit more comfortable, quieter, that kind of thing. That's close though. So I'm going to give the nod to the Battletoad, even though it's a dead heat between these two clapped out bikes. And it goes to show my sensibilities and sort of judging a book by its cover that that two of the oldest and in worst shape bikes that we've ridden on Daily Rider Classics are right at the top. Because you know, it doesn't necessarily matter how many dents there are or how much you know, mileage it's seen. If it's comfortable and it works well, it can be a good daily rider. As for where it stacks up on the actual Daily Rider leaderboard, here we got a Aprilia Touareg 660 at the top. No way is an RDGS better than that. Gixxer 1000, Pan America, Triumph Tiger Sport 660, MV Agusta Turismo Veloce. An original RDGS is not as potent or modern a motorcycle as a Turismo, but I might put it above there, just below the Tiger Sport 660. That's a solid daily rider. Yeah, so I think it would be somewhere right around there, which gives you an idea of where the Versys the Battletoad would be up in near the top two. These classics, they can hold their own, I tell you. Okay, let me know in the comments what you thought of the whole destination daily rider. If you got a kick out of it. I know it wasn't the same old route, but if you like it, maybe we can do it again in the future. That's it for Daily Rider this time around. I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun in my hometown, and I very much hope to see you next time on Daily Rider. See you, everybody. Oh, very muddy right there. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I'm going to go around. I don't really want to chew up this land. And I could splatter mud all over the bike if I wanted to. I don't think my dad would give a hoot. Let's just try to be a little gentler on the turf if we can.